retakes were rescheduled for November 22nd. In Irving, students attended today's Veterans Day Parade in town to show support for our local heroes. The pre-K students enjoyed their first visit to Carsey Park, exploring nature and learning about the fall environment. We look forward to a visit from our fire department on Wednesday and learning all about fire safety. And lastly, Irving has a school-wide Thanksgiving collection going on, sponsored by, again, the PTO and Nurse FAM. We encourage families to get involved in whatever way they can.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's great news about DECA and $2,000. Wow.
Yes, I'm proud.
All right, superintendent's report, please.
DECA is a machine.
Yeah.
So I am very excited to ask several students and Ms. Irene Marks to come on up with me, if that's okay. Not here. I'm going to come around the table. So we can, come on up, guys. So we can talk a little bit about the efforts that these wonderful students and Ms. Marks and other teachers made to reach, I wouldn't quite call it the pinnacle of sustainability. That would mean we're gold status. We are bronze certified Sustainable Jersey schools. I thank the board members, including Michelle, Rob, and Mark, who were present to, and Ann, were you? No, I'm sorry, you weren't there, were you? Could make it to be present at the award ceremony. So tonight we're going to talk about what led to that certification process. You hear about it, but you might not know what's going on behind the scenes. And then all of the things that are happening that didn't necessarily lead to the certification process, but are still in the name of sustainability. Things like food waste collection and other things that these guys have done. So I'm going to pass this torch to Ms. Marks, and she's going to talk about the recognition we received and what led to that. Big button. Is the one you want? Okay, this, or do you want to use the podium?
I'll just that's fine. Okay. Hi. Last month, all 4 of Highland Park schools were again awarded bronze certification by Sustainable Jersey for Schools. It is a prestigious designation that shows our school district is committed to sustainable practices. I was here 3 years ago talking about this program when we were first certified, and it's a 3-year recertification process. These awards would not be possible without the hard work and dedication of all those involved. Each school acts independently to complete their own actions. Each school has a green team made up of teachers, staff, parents, community members, and even students from the high school and middle schools. Okay. The process of being certified requires completing a number of sustainable actions, and the work is quite involved. There are school actions that the schools complete independently, and there are also district actions that the schools all benefit from district actions. So some of the district actions, I'm going to tell you about the certification process and just give you an example of the work that the school has done to achieve certification. So the district actions include professional development for sustainability, buying renewable energy, which the school has done for many years, by the way, anti-idling education, and safe routes to school policies. And some school-specific actions include implementing breakfast after the bell, TerraCycling, which is in the category of recycling non-mandated materials, planting the school gardens, and having green infrastructures such as rain barrels and a rain garden. In addition to recognizing the Green Team members for all their hard work, I also want to acknowledge the support from the administration and to Dr. Taylor for fostering sustainable practices in the schools. Okay.
Oh, here it is. I stole it.
Okay, that's a tree project. Okay. As a bonus, the school district also received the Green Team Collaboration Award last month from Sustainable Jersey which recognizes outstanding work achieved through collaboration between the school district and the municipality. Through the years, there have been numerous collaborative projects, big and small, between the school district and the borough. They include the school's participation in the borough's annual Earth Day Festival, where all 4 schools promote environmental stewardship through education and fun activities. Another collaborative project is the establishment of school gardens 9 years ago through a $10,000 grant from Sustainable Jersey. And most recently, a $30,000 grant for planting trees on school grounds. And you can see some of the trees there. Melanie McDermott, who cannot be here, she was actually the lead in this tree grant project. And I'm going to read her write-up on this project. Okay. By working together, this district green team and the municipality were able to obtain a $30,000 grant from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection that we are using to plant over 75 trees, primarily in the high school and middle school campuses, with some tree plantings at Irving and Bartle. In partnership with Rutgers Cooperative Extension and based on input from school leadership, science teachers, the high school environmental club, and interested community members, the Municipal Shade Tree Advisory Committee wrote and submitted the grant to the state's Urban and Community Forest Program. The grant was awarded to the borough, which serves as fiscal manager for the project. Starting with the design concept provided by a Rutgers landscape architect, the High School Environmental Club, Sustainability Class, and Shade Tree Committee collaborated to help select the tree species and planting sites. A small native fruit orchard, wetland and upland forests, ecological communities, and shade trees will enhance the existing outdoor classroom, rain garden, and school garden to create a natural learning laboratory that will also beautify the school grounds and adjacent community playground. A win for the schools, the borough, and the environment.
Can I just add something before I give it to the kids real quick? I just wanted to point out what you're seeing in the picture. The gentleman to the very left is the representative from Rutgers University. Those are students from the Environmental Club. And Irene was referring to architectural specs that he made with his team and shared with us. And that's a photo on the right. Okay. Move on to the kids.
Yes. So next, we're going to have some high school and middle school students who are members of their school's green teams, environmental club, and also members of Sustainable Highland Park, which is the borough's green team. And they're going to speak about their projects. Even though these students have busy lives, they make time to attend Sustainable Highland Park's monthly meetings and fully participate by raising their concerns, ideas, and solutions to make their schools and community a better place to live. And I'm going to turn it over to Joyce Moe.
Hello. So as you can see in the PowerPoint, there was some crops still being grown in the Highland Park High School garden. So Irene kind of mentioned gardens that we purchased through a grant 9 years ago. It's still being used now in the environmental science classes as part of the curriculum for learning how to manage some gardens and some stuff about the environment.
Well, this year we had a good amount of crops, and there's a lot of corn, some squash. It was really great. And so we really want to encourage that program to continue and possibly expand on it.
Hello. In the middle school, we have converted the plastic straws from to paper straws, and we had also brought corn-based 100% biodegradable utensils into the mix of the lunch periods.
Do you guys want to talk a bit about waste management?
So in August, I spoke here in the August Board of Education meeting about a food waste reduction initiative. So as an update, in Irving and primarily Bartle, share tables have been established where students can drop off unwanted, unconsumed food, and students can also take food if they're still hungry. In high school, we've updated our share table to be a share table basket where NHS members just go around lunch and ask students in the cafeteria if they want to donate any food or if they would also like to take any food.
Before you leave that, do you want to talk about the meeting we had with the folks who are thinking about collecting the food?
Oh, yes. We met with the food pantry and, what was it, Owl? Oh, here, why don't you?
So we met up with Jason Flatt from Elijah's Promise, who is also going to be aiding Highland Park in creating these food waste reduction plans. He's someone who has been implementing these plans in New Brunswick and has been going really well since January. So we're really excited to work with our neighbors in New Brunswick and making sure the Highland Park food waste reduction initiatives are successful.
Currently in the Highland Park High School Environmental Club, we're trying to get a grant probably from Sustainable Jersey, and we have a high likelihood of getting it since we were just recertified. And so with that, we can buy new TerraCycling bins because the ones that we have are mostly made out of like cardboard boxes when we did the Earth Day celebration. And we'd also we would get composting bins because we're trying to implement a composting system in the high school. That would be really great and help reduce food waste even further. And the most recent, the project that we want to complete as soon as possible is the purchase of new planters for the high school garden. They're currently like made out of wood that is like drilled together, but they're very quickly deteriorating. So with the new planters, we'd be able to purchase new planters that would last a lot longer, and it would be really great for both the environmental science class and the environmental club in general.
In the middle school, we have put TerraCycle bins that are up there, and we have informed our students and fellow peers about TerraCycle with the signs on the walls of what and what you cannot TerraCycle. So we also have the corn-based utensils everywhere in the school district, in Irving, Bartle, the middle, and high school. So that's pretty great.
Well, thank you, everybody. Let's give them a little round of applause.
Thank you so much.
I would like to open up for any questions the board may have or comments. I'll give the mic back to you guys.
Just a comment. I mean, thank you so much for coming. I know we're involved in Sustainable Schools New Jersey, but it's fantastic to hear the specifics about what you guys are doing. So congratulations to you all and to our green teams at the schools. That's just wonderful news. I love the share tables. Those are so great.
I really wanted to quickly ask about the utensils and the straws because it seems like that was a kind of a student-led thing. How did you do that, and who started that idea?
So I don't know if you know Miss Frango in the middle school. She has this Be the Change project that I don't think she's doing this year. Well, the last 2 years she's been doing it. And for my Be the Change project, I converted the town restaurants from plastic straws to now paper straws. We gave them free trials of paper straws, and hopefully they're going to continue using them. And I wanted to bring that to the schools because it's Highland Park. We need to convert everyone. And Dr. Taylor was very happy and flexible with this. And then we got corn-based utensils and paper straws.
That's fantastic. Congratulations. And thank you, Dr. Taylor, as well. Thank you.
I would definitely like to hear more about Be the Change happening. If we could talk about that later, you guys, But yeah, that's a great program, so I'm so glad to see that come out of it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, thank you so much. That was fantastic. Just fascinating.
So thank you. You're going back to the auditorium now? Yeah, they're all involved in the drama. One last thank you for Irene and Melanie McDermott. They're behind the scenes. They never want to take that much credit. They're always giving it up. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow in school. I want to switch gears and provide one more very brief presentation to the board and the community in response to a request from a few board members about what our teachers have been doing with the Donors Choose grants that they have been acquiring. So just give me 1 second. I'm going to sit here instead of stand in front of you guys and share some photos with you. So our teachers have taken to the web to generate grants, and they've been using the money to benefit their students directly in the classroom. I thought I would just touch on a couple of these grants. Ms. Stahl's class at Bartle, for instance, was able to provide T-shirts for her entire class around a series of readings that they did about being kind and choosing kindness to make other people's days. I don't have a photo of this particular grant. I'm going to show you a photo of Ms. Krupski's class that used funds to build their classroom libraries, which are in part her effort, or was her effort when she was the teacher. She has passed these books along to the successor to promote cultural responsiveness. I'm going to show you a photo about that in a second. Our Spanish teacher at the middle school, Ms. Bell, has been using write-on clipboards. I had to look this up on the web to figure out what they are. They're like mini whiteboards. It's okay, like mini whiteboards, but they actually have clips as well. So students can not only write answers on these little whiteboards and then hold them up, but they can also clip paper to them. So they use them, they have dual use. They use them both to share what they know by displaying the whiteboard, and they can also use it as a little mini desk. Miss Bell, by the way, if you ever walk into her classroom, you see she's into flexible seating. She's got cushions all over the place.
She's amazing. She's amazing.
Oh, I know. Yeah, she's a rock star. Yeah. So because the students don't always sit behind desks, they use clipboards to do that. And she also she had 2 grants. The other grant was to increase her level of library. Ms. Belper, who's one of our new teachers, it's her second year, but her first full year being the gifted and talented teacher, the advanced learning coordinator, purchased a series of books related to STEM with a focus on encouraging young female students to participate in science, tech, engineering, and math fields. So here's some photos. This is the library sets in Ms. Krupski's old classroom. These are books in, this is Ms. Stahl's class. And this is actually a grant that I didn't talk about from Ms. Yonks, Ms. Amanda Yonks, who's a special education teacher at Bartle. These are called Buddha boards. Buddha boards are used to allow students to express their feelings when they need to, have some kind of outlet. So instead of verbally expressing their feelings or physically, they can go on their Buddha board. So she has one for each student. They erase right away. They're like the old, I forget what they call those. Etch-a-sketch. That's right. The 2 knobs. You could probably get one on eBay. So that's it for now. I mean, I could expand on this if you're interested, but I just wanted to give you a little taste of what our teachers are using the money for.
That's amazing. I don't know how our teachers have time to teach class all day and then to write up these grants and submit them and all of this stuff. And I know Donors Choose has all kinds of requirements about what they have to submit and all the proof they have to submit. So thank you to our teachers for supplying the items that we cannot. Donors Choose I always find a little bit embarrassing that we sort of have to go out to the community and ask for money, but our teachers are incredible.
In some cases, these are purchases made after we've planned the budget, so they didn't anticipate them?
Oh, of course. No, I didn't mean that, we were supposed to give them for them and we didn't. No, the teachers need something extra that the board is not able to provide, or maybe the teachers didn't even realize they needed until it came up. It's just amazing that they are able to persevere after class, go out and write these grants. It's just incredible.
So that concludes my record-breaking brief superintendent's report.
My goodness, are you sure there's nothing else you'd like to share?
No, and it's before 8 o'clock.
Okay, so
I'll let the record show.
All right. So now we're going to move on to our committee reports and items for review. Unless anybody had questions about Dr. Taylor's presentation, let me not forget about that. Questions, comments? No. All right. Let's move on. May we have the curriculum and instruction committee report, please?
Yes, you
Michelle.
may. Okay, so this is hopefully going to be quick. I'll try to be brief, but we had a lot to talk about. So we were lucky enough to have Ms. McNally, the principal of Irving Primary, join us, and she gave us quite a good update on the pace of change at Irving School as far as play-based learning. Yeah, so we're making a lot of progress there, it sounds like. We have wooden blocks, really high-quality block sets in each classroom. And the question that they are dealing with as a building is how do we connect play to meaningful learning? So what we're trying to do is make sure that we have play-based curriculum for grades preschool through second grade integrated into our curriculum. So it's not just a section of play during the day and then desk work. The goal is that we have play integrated into the entire day. So we're working towards that. It's not an overnight change, but we have seen a lot of progress. Right now, we have 30 minutes built into the day for unfacilitated playtime, and that is something that the teachers use to observe students in their social skills building and play if they're independently playing. So 30 minutes is an improvement on the 20 minutes, I think, of the previous year. So it takes some time to get the curriculum, kind of absorbed, the play absorbed into the curriculum. But teachers are doing PD for play-based learning and have been. So for example, in math, they're using calendar math. So they have, morning meeting time or sitting on the rug time, and the teachers are trained in Conquer Math strategies where they can talk about calendar math, anything associated with the calendar, how numbers build upon each other, so they can talk about, sequential numbers. They can talk about different concepts as far as, counting by twos on the calendar or things like that. So these are things that they are incorporating manipulatives to learn. So, for example, they have blocks that build upon each other. And so for each day that they're in school, that block, is added to the block before it. So it's a very simple conceptual way of understanding time, space, and numerical sequence. So that's just one example. So something as simple as sitting on the floor looking at a calendar is actually math learning. So that's the kind of play-based learning that we are trying to incorporate so that the kids can go on and use different things like housekeeping toys, the kitchens in the classrooms, writing notes to friends, keeping journals, using puppets. All of these things would be literacy activities. These are actually academically valid ways of spending your time, playing with puppets, exploring in the garden, using different art supplies to write your letters, and even just to develop fine motor skills. Working with Play-Doh, art centers provided, with stamps providing kids different tools to, use their fine motor skills. Scavenger hunts out at recess. So we heard a lot of good things about that. Ms. DeMarco, apparently the art teacher at Irving, is doing a lot of integrating of these academic topics into art lessons. So she's working with teachers on math and literacy curriculum being folded into the art curriculum. So that was super exciting to hear. Students get out at least once a day for recess, and they often have additional time in the Irving School garden. Social studies curriculum does need to be revamped, Ms. McNally says, and she would like to make sure that we have a more community-based curriculum that infuses block play. So when they go for a walk in town, they can come back to the classroom and they can build a map using the blocks. So that obviously is spatial relationships. It's also feeling, that your town has a place in the world. It's not just like sitting on a cloud somewhere. So this is good for brain development in lots of different ways in small children. Kindergarten standards dictate that the students should be writing at a level D. Level D was previously first grade writing standards. Yeah. So that means 55 sight words and some form of reading by the end of kindergarten. Ms. McNally was very clear that she is the mother of a late reader, the very proud mother of a late reader whose son didn't read until second grade and is absolutely competent and successful in reading skills at later ages. So she completely understands that although the standards are mandated, there is a range of development which is normal and healthy, and I was so happy to hear that. So I think that she understands that in a way that is hard to express to someone who hasn't lived it, We talked about culturally responsive curriculum in the primary grades, and she was very happy to talk about the books that are on display in the very front of the building. And these are books that are celebrating every holiday that she could find. Anything that is celebrated is on display in the front hallway, and these books are not, behind glass, that these are books that are used by the teachers, and she's encouraging them to use these resources. We did talk about ways that culturally responsive curriculum could be, more than just that. And of course, she completely understands that, but this is one good example of how she's making sure that everyone is at least represented. We did talk about hidden biases and how teachers are capable and are being given PD about the needs of students that they might not immediately appreciate. So there is willing and there is work being done on that front. A man named Eric, I wasn't sure of his last name, but we talked about an Eric from Readers and Writers Workshop who has been doing PD concerning biases and cultural differences with the teachers at Irving. So that is also something that's part of the literacy in the building. Jen Knapp from Bartle, the principal at Bartle, and Ms. McNally, they did full school day PD on the ACEs study. If you're not familiar with the ACEs study, that is, correct me if I'm wrong, but the, oh gosh, now I completely blanked. I'll get it. Adverse, thank you. I can never remember the first word. Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. It is a fascinating study. It is something that is something that Ms. McNally said she was kind of shocked that many staff members in the building had not ever heard of. Adverse childhood experiences could be many different things, and I would guarantee that every single person in this room has at least had one or more. If you take the test, which is available online, and you score, I believe, more than a 10, I'm not sure about that, but there is some significant damage done to your physicality as well as your mental state later in life due to these childhood experiences. So this is very important for our primary educators to know about. Ms. McNally is someone who believes strongly in disseminating that information, and she is actually going to be visiting a place called Conscious Discipline, and that will be further improving her education on the ACEs study and ways in which we can manage adverse childhood experience. The middle school community liaison met with Scott about the ACEs study, and information is coming for the middle school from Irving. So I believe that was some sort of research that was being done. I'm not quite sure.
Action research.
Okay.
During professional or community time.
Right. Okay. So she was very clearly excited to share all this information with us. She was happy to be there, she said, and she was happy for any of us to come visit anytime. That was an open invitation when she left the room. Then we moved on to the agenda review. There was one HIB case that we dealt with, one that we're still talking about. Field trips on the list, we reviewed those. And if you have any questions, go ahead and ask. But I think that anything that might jump out at you was put into the notes. So 2 trips are hopefully going to be approved retroactively. That is the walking trip from the 8th graders going over to Irving to read to the 1st graders, which, like, how could you have a problem with that? It was wonderful. Veterans Day Parade, which was today for middle school, high school students. Mr. Mladnick started the program of visiting the Veterans Day Parade. Or no, I'm sorry. Was that the reading to the 8th? I think that was the reading. Mr. Mladnick started that program of reading to
And Ms. Paxton's taking it over.
Right, and Ms. Paxton is now taking over that. There's another field trip that we talked about, the Liberty Science Center. That is for GLOW students. The Mexico Model UN trip, we talked about the fundraising. That covers the majority of the cost for that. We, as the Board of Ed, do chip in to cover some of the cost for the chaperones that attend. So if you have any other questions, let me know. But those were the things that jumped out to us. The sub-strategic planning, that is something that we talked about the curriculum committee doing, where we would have sort of an additional strategic plan in addition to our regular district-wide strategic plan specific to curriculum. So we'll be working on that plan, hopefully, like, via email. We'll talk about ways that we can, set goals for that. But if you have any suggestions for that, please let me know, and I'll share them with the rest of the curriculum committee. The next thing was super exciting. It's the memorandum of agreement, which is in the board folder, between the Garden State Equality organization and our district, which is one of 12. Thank you. One of 12 districts in the entire state, which was chosen to pilot the LGBTQ plus inclusive curriculum. So we are very, very lucky to be able to do that before most anyone else in New Jersey. Mr. Lassiter and Ms. O offered the professional development that is going to be needed to all interested faculty. And there are 2 from the middle school and 2 from the high school that are going to be attending workshops on December 3rd and May 2nd.
We actually have 2 Bartles teachers, too, who are interested now.
Oh, really?
So it'll be 6
Okay.
total from the district.
Wonderful. So 6 altogether. 6 altogether.
Correct.
Okay. And my assumption was that they'll be turnkeying the information to their colleagues.
That's the agreement. If you read the MOA, they're very strict, and that's one of the things we have to do. We have to also report back to them, to Garden State Equality, when they conduct surveys, how things are going. We're attending our first workshop in a couple of weeks. There'll be 2, one now and one in May.
So the one is December 3rd. Did I get that right? The first one? Okay. So yeah, 6 teachers is good. I'd love to see more, but I don't know how many we're allowed. Do you know? To be involved in the PD.
So I've been told that, I don't know how many are allowed, but districts are mostly sending 2 people. We just felt, so this coincides with something that we've been trying to do behind the scenes, which is to have teachers be point people in their respective schools to provide their peers answers to questions that might spring up about anything related to gender identity, LGBTQIA support needs. So we figured these would be the same people.
Yeah.
So that's why it made sense for us to have people from almost every school. Irving right now is not represented,
So
but soon.
later on, I'm going to be talking about some of the things that I was able to do at the NJSBA conference. One of them was the fact that I got to meet the educator that will be coming to Highland Park to introduce us to the pilot program. Their name is Cole Callahan, and I think we had talked about this, So Cole was very excited for Highland Park to be involved because we did talk about the policy that we had put forth. And I did ask if there was contact that we could make kind of preemptively. And they were super excited about making contact with anyone that was interested. So there is a Facebook page for educators that are interested in learning more. It's called Educators for Equality. And I think that it's a private page. So you can look into that if you're interested.
It is. Yeah, E4E. I'm actually part of that organization. So it's based in Neptune right now. Lori Burns is the head of it.
Yes.
And she's also the one who's spearheading the inclusive curricula.
Right.
Colin
So Lori-
Hogan was there.
Yeah.
We've had some
So
folks from Holland
Cole
Park.
is just under Lori in that organization.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Cole also mentioned during the conference that them and their partner are looking for a place to buy a house. So I was selling Highland Park. So we might have a new neighbor. But Cole Callahan on Facebook, Educators for Equality, a really good resource for anyone that's interested in learning more about what we will be piloting. Okay, so we're looking forward to the sample curriculum, and that is coming, the curriculum guide, sorry. Update on health curriculum at the middle school. We did reach a consensus about best practices and lessons on puberty. The students are advised by every expert that Scott got in touch with to integrate students of all gender identities into the same classroom during lessons on puberty. There were lots of different pieces of research that Scott handed to us. It was like War and Peace. Like, it was just such a tremendous amount of paper coming at us. But it was really important for lots of students that they learn about their their development with people in the room that were the same age, that they are, just the idea that it wouldn't be taboo to talk about these different things. Just because your bodies are different doesn't mean that there's anything negative about learning about how how other people are dealing with these different changes. So I think that was the end result of that. So the instructors of our health curriculum regarding puberty, including the new high school phys ed teacher who took the place of Ms. Shimon, they are looking forward to using the best practices, integrating students into their lessons. Our new supervisor of curriculum and instruction, Michelle Rodriguez, has been asked by Dr. Taylor to engage the social studies team on the New York Times article 1619. That was another curriculum update. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that. The article was pretty much all-inclusive information about slavery in the Americas, starting in 1619, which is part of the title. It is now a podcast, which you can listen to, and I highly recommend. It was wonderful, and it will be available as a book. So this is going to be a really wonderful resource for our social studies and history curriculum. I also mentioned during our meeting that I met someone that was representing Entourage yearbooks. They are currently working with our Bartle administration for their yearbooks and photography. And as it relates to curriculum, they offer, included in their photography and yearbook packages, field trips and tours of their studio, so that it would be photography oriented field trip, but it would also show the process of putting together something like a yearbook. And they are based in North Brunswick, so it couldn't be closer. The gentleman that I met with, his name is William Coney. He was very, very friendly, very excited to work with us, and he's looking forward to talking with the other building administrators about yearbooks and photographs and field trips and everything. So it's the kind of feeling that I never got from Life Touch. And I was super excited to hear about all of this very local business crossover. So I hooked him up with Scott, and Scott's been talking to him via email. And that is the conclusion of my curriculum notes.
That's amazing. I love the idea of photography field trips for our students.
Yeah, it's
that's
wonderful.
fantastic.
So close, too.
Let me see. Okay, so we talked about everything. Does anybody have questions or concerns or comments about that report? No, then moving on to finance and facilities. Go ahead, Mark.
Anne, thank you. It's lovely having two microphones here.
Oh, yes, all the better
It's
to
like
hear you
can
with,
you
my
really
dear.
hear me without me yelling? It's like a Senate committee, you know?
Yeah.
I just want to say, talking about politics, that we, three of us, Chris and Darcy, couldn't be here tonight, but three of us were elected to new terms on the board, so I'll be here three more years to kick me around. But in all seriousness, it's really an honor to be here and to be doing the work we're doing. So let's...
Should have led with that, I'm sorry. Many congratulations.
It's fine. And for whatever it's worth, this will be my 6th term over 30 years. I never ran unopposed before, so I always actually had to win. Other than this year, we ran unopposed, so it was a lot easier. So going on to finance. We had a finance committee meeting just before this start of our board meeting. We had a number of discussions, starting with a meeting with Mike O'Donnell, who's our facilities manager, where we discussed maintenance request system that the school system uses, and concerns from the staff, some of the staff, about getting the current state of the facilities problem updated on a regular basis so that they know sooner where their problem was in the queue in the facilities department. And he gave us the update, which is that after the meeting where this was expressed by the HPEA, they started discussing it with Dr. Taylor, and they've come up with some solutions, and it looks like they'll be moving along. So I don't know if anyone's here today from the HPEA, but this will be or if they're listening, and Keith, if you're out there listening, this is definitely a step in the right direction, and we're going to be visiting this more closely. But I think it's something that often gets overlooked, and it's really important to the staff and to the administration and to just the students in the school that things not only get fixed, but that everyone's aware of when they're being fixed and what's being updated. The agenda has a proposed rate for long-term substitute teachers. The district has had and we discussed this in the meeting, it's been a problem for us. It's hard to get long-term subs. They're hard to find people. You have to pay enough. So what we agreed upon in the meeting, in particular for one opening that we know is coming, is to significantly increase the rate that we pay for long-term subs. It will be on the agenda next time in the agenda. It's actually an agenda item as well, but it will be on the agenda. We will have an updated rate. And the hope is that we can get highly qualified people. It is not so easy often. In the olden days, by the way, when we needed substitute teachers or even long-term people, we had a full-time person making phone calls every day, and then you'd have these last-minute problems. Now there are firms that do the work for us. So we work with a firm called Source for Teachers. It's not perfect, but it works, and most of the districts use the firm. What we've done is just up the rate to be significantly higher than other districts in the county. And hopefully we'll get the best people, particularly for long-term positions. We started discussions of the actual costs of special education out-of-district placements versus what's budgeted. This has been an area where the budget has really been difficult to manage over the years. And so one of the things I put in place for the Finance Committee is to review on a monthly basis how much are we spending for out-of-district and even in-district costs, a full-time paraprofessional for a student or whatever, and compare that to what we budgeted so we don't have surprises. And you'll see tonight, as there always are, there's surprises, but when the surprises add up, you may find that you're running short of money, and we can't have that happen. So as with everything, we're trying to keep close controls, and I would say we're getting very, very wonderful information from Linda and from Scott on where we are, and from the special ed department. So we are getting a very good feel for where we are versus the budget. We also talked where we are in terms of the funds from last year that were carried forward to this year. Every year we budget, and if there's money left over, and we think there will be money left over, we budget it into the next year's budget. Mostly because the amount of taxes we raise is so small. So we're, for this year, we had budgeted $1 million to go forward, and we were well short, but as the accountants came in and reviewed the numbers, and the board knows about this, and I think you'll all be happy to hear, we're getting very close to having that million that we budgeted, so we don't have to take out of surplus. Because that's another thing you don't want, is for your surplus to get too small. So I think it's very good news. I was very pleased to see the numbers when they were presented to us by Linda earlier. We reviewed the current enrollment. Current enrollment is around 1,600 to 1,610. It's lower than it has been. It's been as high as 1,650. On the other hand, it's not the 2,100 that the demographer had prognosticated a few years ago, which certainly had me reading the demographics report and trying to understand how a number like that could possibly come up. I think the demographer felt that all of the new buildings, we would get 1 or 2 or 3 children from every new condo or apartment or whatever. But if you do the actual numbers, it's much smaller. So we've lost a slight amount over the last 4 or 5 years, less than 1% kinds of numbers. But that's not bad news necessarily. The bad news is to go from 1,600 to 2,000, because then where do you put them and how do you budget for the teachers for them? And the good news is we're not going in that direction. The last thing is we briefly discussed the testimony we had last month from Rob Holsapple, who came to discuss the special education interest group, the CPAC group, parents of students with special education needs, and some of the help that the district could give that group. For instance, they cannot do mailings. We can't give them the email addresses of all of the families that have special education students, students with IEPs in the district, but we can do those mailings for them. We haven't been sending a representative to those meetings. We did 30 and 25 years ago send a representative to the meetings. I think that would make that group stronger. And the more help we give that group, the better it is for everyone. So we discussed the costs and other potential options in having somebody that works in the district work with the CPAC group, and again, try to help them, strengthen them, as Ann said, perhaps help them get speakers, but certainly do mailings for them and appear at their meetings. So we discussed that. I hope Rob is listening. I tried to get a chance to talk to him on election night at Pino's this year, and he and I crossed paths, but then never got to talk. But I do want him to know, if he's listening, that we're taking it very seriously, and we're trying to move forward on it. Okay, so that's our report, our committee report. I'll be minuting that up for the board. As far as the agenda items, which we'll, as Ann said, vote on next time. Item 2 is our usual bill and cafeteria lists. Item 3 is the travel and related expense reimbursements report. Item 4 is approving of contractors for professional services, including nursing services substitutes for middle school, until we have a permanent nurse who can start. Item 5 is a happy item. The Educational Foundation has grants totaling $17,435.85 to, I believe, 7 different programs. I know that some other programs are being evaluated now, and they're looking for more information about them, so hopefully I'll be reading in some more grant money coming forward. Item 6 is out of district placements. This is for displaced students. Item 7 is out of district placements. Number D is an unusually high rate. It's typically high rate of $68,600 for the year. And item 8 is an example of where we have so much trouble planning. I'd say as opposed to a business where you can actually do a budget plan and have some reasonable idea that you're not going to get hit with some staggering amount. This is a student whose tuition is about $100,000 a year, plus transportation, plus summer. And this student, we were notified, needs a one-to-one professional aid during the day. That's another close to $60,000. That was not budgeted. And that's really hits the budget hard, which is why we have to be so careful. Item 9 is a bedside instruction. Item 10 is a facility use agreement for the Center School Gymnasium for basketball practices for the school. Item 11 is the addendum I spoke about, which is a budgetary item to pay a higher rate to long-term substitutes. In this case, one particular program we're looking for, one particular person we're looking for, or position we're looking for. Item 12 is a pass-through, so we're not paying for this. We have to put it in the minutes because the school's in town, but this is a pass-through amount. And item 13 is the Donors Choose program, and these are the grants to these 3 teachers. And I think that is the finance report.
Wonderful, thank you. Are there any comments or concerns? I do want to reiterate, as we always do, that we spend a lot of time emphasizing the cost of our special needs placements. We welcome the opportunity to serve these students, of course. Where our complaint is with the amount of money we get back from the state. So no one listening to this should mistake us for being upset that we have to serve our students. We're delighted to do that. But we do wish that the state would assist us in doing that in a more reasonable amount.
Oh, and I'd like to add that for me, from my perspective, I look at what did we get back from the state 30 years ago and 25 years ago when I was on the board, where the numbers now from the state are pitiful, which means your budget is dictated on where does a family move. Do you have a good program? You have a good program, people move in. In those days, we were getting 70 and 80% of the money back. We're now getting a quarter of that back. And we don't know until a year later as well. So it's very, very difficult for the finance people who work in the district and for the board to really make any sense out of what are we going to do in the future. It's not about the kids. In fact, by having what we feel is such a good program, we're encouraging people to come, and we want them to come. What we really want, as Ann said, is that the state would pay us and pay other districts irrespective of where the kids live.
Right.
So, Ann, thank you for
Of course, I know that's
pointing that out.
implied, but someone piped in halfway through and heard us. I don't want anybody to mistake us for being sort of resentful that we had to pay for these children. We just want help from the state. We're delighted to serve our students as well as we can. Okay, moving on to personnel. That is me. We didn't talk about too many things that were non-confidential during the meeting, so I'm going to just go through the report here. To the agenda items. Most of them are self-explanatory and don't really need to be explained because they're self-explanatory. We have source for teachers being appointed as we do every year. Maternity and childcare absence, change of date, transfer of a teacher. Scott is recommending that we approve the appointment of Mary Jo, or MJ. Is it Trusso-Sabers? Trusso-Sabers? How do I pronounce that?
I don't know. I just call her MJ.
MJ as our interim middle school assistant principal, while Ms. Brady is acting as our interim middle school principal. So we're delighted to have MJ here. Welcome to the district. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah, she just hit the ground running. I saw her on lunch duty today. I'm getting some positive feedback from students.
Wonderful.
And from teachers, so we'll see where it goes.
Fantastic. A new para, another para. Let's see here. We're going to talk more about the new middle school principal potential hire next week. Yeah.
Yep.
We have a new gym teacher, I believe, replacing Mr. Nobles, I think
Correct.
is retiring or leaving.
Yeah, he's leaving the day before Thanksgiving break.
And this new teacher, Ryan Kimiek?
I don't do last names if I don't have to.
Mr. Ryan will be joining us, and we're delighted to have him. Let's see. The sidebar, number 11, the sidebar agreement for the resignation of paraprofessionals. That specifies how many days notice paraprofessionals must give us when they leave. I believe the agreed upon number was 30 days.
Correct.
So paras have to give us 30 days notice under the HPA contract before they leave Highland Park. Okay, more appointments, academic coaches. Number 15, PD, teachers preparing for PD. Stipend changes. I'm sorry, I'm just looking to see if there's anything particularly notable. We have a Swahili translator. That's notable. Number 21. We're delighted to have a Swahili translator. I think that's. Have we ever had somebody that reliably translated Swahili for us before? I don't know if we did.
And today I was asked for a translator of, I'll get back to you, but another
Interesting language. That's
not traditional language.
not traditional to us. Yes, we. It's wonderful to see all the different languages in Highland Park. It's just really outstanding. Excuse me. And I believe. Oh, I know what I was going to talk about. We talked, as always, about the positions that remain open. I think particularly notable are our middle school Spanish teacher position. We have our high school, middle school teachers covering extra periods. Am I getting that right? To make things work now. But we are hoping to find a permanent middle school Spanish teacher. And we're certainly grateful to members of the community who reached out to their networks to see if we could find somebody. Schools across New Jersey are having difficulty finding world language teachers, including Spanish teachers. I know we had a student teacher in one of our middle school classes who told me, I believe she was the only Spanish specialist in her cohort graduating from the GSE this year. There was only one. So, there's going to be a big fight over her, presumably. So we are having difficulty, but we are persisting.
We also have an LDTC position open still.
That's right. And we're using a contractor for that now, right? We're contracting with somebody from the commission. Okay. Were there any others that I'm forgetting that are currently still open?
No, just those two positions.
Just those two, okay. And anybody interested, of course, can go to hbschools.net and go to district info, employment opportunities, and you'll see our AppleTrack webpage. I know there have been concerns in the community about positions not being listed when they should still be listed. I think we've ironed out the issue with AppleTrack, which was automatically removing listings from the site at times before we had hired anyone. So that, fear no more, that is not going to happen again. Thank you, Scott, for figuring that out. And I believe that is all that I had. Anybody have questions, comments? No? Okay. Mark again, policies and regulations.
Yes, thank you. So we had a meeting on November 5th. We discussed a change in the law that requires us to update the student suicide prevention policy. And that has to do with an update in the law which requires a school district, when a student attempts or ideates towards a suicide attempt, to report this to the police so that the police can check whether they have any kind of gun licenses at home and do whatever prevention is necessary so that they don't use the gun. And we try to word it in a way as reasonable as possible, so we're not overstepping any bounds as far as any of our students are concerned, although a student who's talking about suicide and who perhaps they or their family has a gun at home with a legal license, I think it's not an unreasonable law, and whether it's reasonable or unreasonable, we have to put it in our policy. So that is a change to the policy. And that is, in fact, in for first reading tonight. At the next meeting. We did not get to the substance abuse policy 5530, which was on our agenda because we spent so much time on the suicide policy change, and also discussed the review of policy 2363, which I'll get to in a minute, which has to do with the use of cell phones in the school and other devices. But in fact, my apologies, folks, I promised I would read it and change it. I did read it, but I don't feel qualified alone to change it. So we're going to have to do it at the next meeting. I understand some of the issues around substance abuse, but I wanted everyone's input before touching it. It's very long and complicated, and not so simple to make quick decisions. As far as the cell phone lunch policy, after discussing this, it appears as though a good bit of that issue at the middle school around cell phone and other devices has to do with certain games being played that aren't being blocked out by our filters. So we've asked Dr. Taylor to talk to the ID department so that we don't have students who could be outside playing or listening to music, which was the point of students having a cell phone or a device at lunch that they could relax to, but who are instead playing games. And we also talked about the staff knowing that that's the purpose of knowing that's the purpose of the policy, that we want students at lunch who want to have a break, and the break not being to sit and play games around the clock, but rather listen to soft music or not so soft music, or go out and play, and go to the playground, that this is taken seriously. So while we did not change the policy, we discussed it, and we have some suggestions, conclusions, and direction for trying to change a situation where any number of students are sitting around and playing games at lunch, all lunch. That's what we discussed, and of course, for first reading, we have this new suicide prevention policy change, and for second reading next time, again, we have these 8 policies which we did through first reading and we've discussed for months.
Great, thank you.
That's the report.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you very much. I wanted to just add to, having been at the policy meeting and emailed a little bit with Dr. Taylor after, the other reason we decided not to, we considered going through the cell phone policy and just barring all use of cell phones during lunch. We decided not to for a number of reasons, one of which is that students have Chromebooks, and I know that parents may have different feelings about that, but we did give out Chromebooks, and one of the reasons that students have Chromebooks at lunch is so they can do homework. Not all of our students have access to internet at home or reliable access to a data plan. So for some students, this is their only time to sort of freely do their homework. So we didn't want to sort of rule out all device use at lunch. Nonetheless, our students will be glad to know we are trying to block a lot of games, so the students who are not doing homework or listening to music perhaps will take advantage of the opportunity to go outside.
I do want to clarify that we're pushing hard for our teachers to not assign homework online for after school periods. My thinking when I wrote the email and spoke about what you just said regarding the opportunity for kids to go online and do homework is that they could do peripheral research if they want to. If there's something that they think could supplement the work that they're doing, that would be the time. but they shouldn't be having assigned online homework after school hours. And Dr. Nikoshi did send another email out to the team about that.
That's great. I'm sorry. Yes, I did actually forget about that. They shouldn't be having online homework. Nonetheless, people may want to use the internet to do research, as you said. So thank you. Yeah.
Can I just quickly ask, though, because my experience as a parent was that everything between the student and the teacher at the middle school and the high school, in many cases, was communicating through Google Classroom, which requires, an internet access. So whether or not they're assigning homework to be done online, or they're assigning practice tests to be taken online, or Quizlets or whatever, there still is a significant, I don't know what you want to call it, crutch that is impossible for us to address if the teachers are telling their students that the only way to communicate is through Google Classroom.
Michelle, I'm not sure. I have to ask Dr. Koshy this, or I'll try it on my own. You may be able to access Google Classroom offline. So I was on an airplane yesterday, and I was actually, for the first time, using Google Chrome to work on a Google Doc without internet access. It was seamless. It was really what I had been hearing you can do, being done. I'll follow up and find that the same could be done for Google Classroom.
So I do think that is not a problem. Working on a doc, everything is saved and then uploaded once you are on Wi-Fi or some other access point. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the communication that is kind of like a chat room type setup that happens on Google Classroom. And I'm sure the students here could probably give us better information because they're actually there.
So I think with more accelerated high school classes, Classroom is heavily relied on, not necessarily for getting assignments turned in, but for that background, that research. You're expected to do at-home prep for AP classes. So you're going to get links to congress.gov for an AP class. And not every student chooses to read it. That's on the student, but I do think that being available is one thing. But in a lot of classes, for example, electives, a lot of Mr. Harper's and Mr. Yurko's classes rely on turning things in online because you're dealing with graphic design or web design. And
but for those electives, a majority of them can be done during the day. But like if your essay is due at 11:59, you're gonna have to do it at home online and turn it in on Google Classroom, and that's the way it's done.
But I do think that it's not traditionally I'm going to assign a online document. It's going to be due tonight at midnight. Get it into me. You have one day to work on it. It's more of I'm going to give you maybe one or two, usually around two or more, in class periods to do it. So you have the school time to do it. And then if you do have access at home, you can choose to not do it at school and then maybe work on it at home supplementally and still turn it in.
So effectively, you have extra time to work on it and polish it if you have Wi-Fi access.
Yeah, but as Andy was saying, for AP classes especially, a majority of the work is done online. AP Classroom, all of the practice quizzes are all online. So it's essential to have
It's
access.
essential. That's what I understood.
Yeah.
Especially for, from what I remember, AP Gov, there were lots of big papers due at 11:59. Yeah. And if it weren't for our Wi-Fi, I'm pretty sure my daughter would have failed that class. So that's a very personal story to me, but I'm seeing you, nod in agreement. So I'm sure I'm not the only parent that experienced that. So I did see a disparity, and I did see an advantage that my daughter had in having Wi-Fi at home.
Scott, is there a way we could ask you to sort of come back to us with some sort of plan or framework by which we can't eliminate disparities. Some people are wealthier. Some people can fly to the Library of Congress, whatever. People can do all kinds of things. But I would like our homework assignments not to sort of make the disparities worse. When you have papers that are repeatedly due at 11:59, or when there's millions of resources that are accessed via links after school, that's making it very difficult for some of our students, according to our survey, some of our students to to access the material. If you don't have a really good data plan that you can use as a hotspot, you're downloading stuff from congress.gov, that's going to take a lot of data. It's not all of our students, but there is a significant portion that don't have reliable internet and are having to go to the library, and then having to go to a friend's house, and then having to do this and sit in Dunkin' Donuts. Okay, yeah, I mean, I just would like to hear what the district's plan is to minimize these disparities as much as possible.
I'd like input on that. Maybe the central leadership team can help me through this.
When's the next meeting?
Early December, about 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, I mean, we got to do it.
Maybe I'll invite some other players to that meeting to help.
Might I suggest students?
Oh, students, yes. Students could be involved in this.
That's a good idea.
You mean these guys in particular?
Well, I mean, yes, those guys would be fantastic.
I've enlisted it, but I'll figure it out.
I'm not going to ask right now. Do you guys have Wi-Fi at home?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
But because that's
actually, maybe I'll have my superintendent cabinet.
Your what?
My superintendent's cabinet, which is a very diverse group of students.
Oh, okay.
Be involved. Great.
I think it would be good to talk to some students who might not. I mean, you don't want to go surveying students. Do you have Wi-Fi at home? But if you could talk to some students who might not have Wi-Fi at home, which maybe these guys, may not be these guys, that would be helpful.
The students on my cabinet could fall into various categories.
There might be some students there. Okay. All right. I do know that our students are, one thing that our very determined students are is persistent. And if a student really, really wants to figure out how to get Wi-Fi, they'll go to friends' houses, they'll go to Dunkin' Donuts, but that's not possible for every student.
Not at 11:59.
Well, and I hear you saying you don't have to do it at 11:59, but it is a major advantage if we're repeatedly having things due at 11:59.
Right, if you have extracurriculars, you're usually out of the house until 7, 8 o'clock. So, if you're a student that enjoys, academics as well as athletics, you're going to want to finish your work at some point, sometime, after you're done with those other things. So I think this might need to be a student-led conversation as far as I'm concerned, because we cannot address problems that we aren't aware of, and we're not aware of the problems because we aren't living that life. So I would love to make sure that the students are at the center of this conversation and not just surveyed by a few voices, but maybe it's an assembly or something where students are invited to write a paragraph to hand in to the high school administration. Something that is welcoming of everyone's voice would be ideal, because I do know that the kids who don't have Wi-Fi are probably not the ones who are going to pipe up and assert themselves.
All right, Scott, so in the next month and a half or so, you'll come back to us with additional information, maybe from the central leadership team, from your superintendent's cabinet.
Well, the next meeting's December 6th. I'm going to invite my cabinet.
Okay.
There are about 9 students involved, so if they can all make it, we'll go from there.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you very much.
I'd just like to say that a majority of teachers, especially Mr. Mladnick, because I spend a majority of my time in his classroom, he offers, he'll be like, okay, well, if you guys don't have internet access at home, come see me, to hand out, what we're talking about. And now I'm seeing other teachers do that and be more aware that not everybody might have access.
That is so wonderful to hear. I remember when he was in the middle school, he would always do that too. But I'm glad to hear it's also spreading. So thanks to our teachers. There's a lot to think about in the school day, and that's one of them. We
Right,
really
and so
appreciate it.
with them, with Mr. Mladnick or any of the others, would they be willing to accept that paper at 8 o'clock in the morning?
The prior morning, probably.
No, I'm not talking about the prior morning. I'm talking about the following morning at 8 o'clock.
You're talking about
when
the
they
one
come
that's-
into work.
Yeah.
Right.
A piece of paper.
I feel like most of our wonderful teachers at the high school are able to be flexible and understanding
Right.
and work with students. But with that, it's how, okay, if it's this time, it's understanding, but it's also identifying if it's going to be almost taken advantage of too. There has to be an agreement. So when you build up your trust with your teachers, being okay, every paper we have, because I don't have internet access at home, I will hand in the following morning at 8 a.m. But if I feel if our teachers see that it's getting pushed back, they're not going to be the happiest.
Right.
I understand that view. It's possible it might be nice for teachers to just have things be due at 8:30 in the morning. Then there would be no issue about pushing back, as everybody's, sort of a universal design for students. That, of course, is for the administration. I mean, that would be one way. That would be one way to somewhat minimize disparities, right? I mean, it doesn't. There's always going to be a problem. Some people have more time to do schoolwork and more resources, but at least it minimizes it a little tiny bit.
I would also like to think that the teachers are doing what they're doing just because they're not quite aware of how significant the problem is, which again would be alleviated by the student body's voice being the center of the conversation. So knowing from the students what it is that's difficult, instead of, promoting the idea that only certain students get to speak up in representation of the other students. I feel like plenty of students are not speaking up because they feel like it doesn't really matter if they do or they don't, nothing will change. And it's unfortunate in lots of ways, but I also feel like as far as like civics education, that's a tragedy. We need people to feel that their voices matter. So this is one way that we can show students that in practice.
Yeah, I like the sound of your superintendent's cabinet. And I thank you guys for sharing your experiences. What was I going to say? Yeah, I agree. I mean, students have shown us to some extent what they're going through because, we did that survey on Wi-Fi access and many students did respond. Not everybody. And so we do know from that some of our students don't have reliable Wi-Fi. And I'm sure many of them managed to cobble together Wi-Fi. Okay, thank you for getting back to us about that. Thank you, students. Michelle. Okay, where are we? Equity and excellence. Did someone want it? Rob Magazine, or you're the only one I remember is on that committee?
Okay,
Who else is?
we did not meet.
We have a meeting on November 21st. That I think is our next meeting.
Okay, because I see November 28th, but to me, that's Thanksgiving Day.
Oh, yeah, 21st
So I
at
have
4
to
o'clock
change
is what
that
I've
on my
got.
schedule. All right, so the 21st.
I'll be having a good Riesling at that
Wonderful.
point.
Okay, so we'll hear from you guys at our first December meeting, sounds like. Thank you. All right. And now we're not going to vote, or we would not vote until public comment anyway. It's time for public comment. The Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and has reserved this time for your comments. Board policies 164 and 167 establish and regulate the right of the public to participate in public meetings. If you would be so kind as to come up to the podium when you'd like to speak, write down your name, your address. If you're a student, say your name and address. Write down your name and address. If you're a student or in a sensitive position of some sort, you can just write Highland Park, whatever you are. Thank you so much. Hello again.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rob Holtzoff. I'm at 431 South 7th Avenue. I'm organizing the Highland Park Special Education Parents Advisory Group. I just want to give you a quick update. We formed ourselves as a legal entity. We're now a C3. I've been joined on my board by Mark Wiener. He's a noted psychologist in town. Council President Phil George. Fabio Camuves, who until very recently represented the NGA at the state level, and Paul Pinheiro, who is an assistant superintendent in Westfield. So we're starting to get going.
That's quite a cabinet you have there. That's great.
Thank you.
Board cabinet.
And we are looking for more people. We held a fundraiser at Pino's last Saturday. I don't know if any of you heard about it, but it was very successful. We raised over $1,500.
Wow. That's amazing.
I have to thank a bunch of people. We had 17 different musicians perform.
Wow.
They all did 20 minutes, on and off. They were wonderful. Steve and Siobhan, the owners of Pino's, who donated this space to us. Max, the sound man, who donated his pay for the night back to us. Natasha, the bar manager, who bought everybody pizza and wouldn't take any money back. It was a remarkable evening. Fania did chair massage for 2 hours and gave us all the money.
Oh my gosh.
It was heartwarming. I was moved.
What a community we have, huh?
It is. I love Highland Park. We still need a coach/faculty advisor, and I look forward to to that happening. I was thinking perhaps a board liaison might be in order. I was hoping you guys might nominate Monique. She's not here, so it might be a good time to do it.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. We'll take that up at the next meeting when she's here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Rob, we discussed this at Finance, and you missed my report. I named you before, but we've been talking to Scott about finding someone, which could be an administrator or a teacher in the district, to help with what you talked about, which is emails, but also, as Ann has said, getting perhaps speakers, being your rep. 30 years ago, there was someone in the administration who was the rep to the equivalent organization then, and so this is on our minds as well. I just want you to know.
We can handle the speakers. There's really three.
Oh, okay.
Terrific.
There's really three things that we want. We want somebody who can be provide us targeted email lists. We don't need to know who these people are, but
Right.
I just want them to be targeted and from us.
Right.
I want them to administer a Facebook page for us, and I would like them to spend one period in each and every special education class so we can have a more global understanding of who we're representing. You know, 'cause I know the GLOW program because my son's in it,
Right.
but what's going on in Irving and Bartle, not so much.
That's great. That's actually both more and less than we were thinking about. I like the idea of having somebody be in all the classes. All right, so you guys are in touch personally, I understand, right, about this, Scott and Mr. Holtzapfel? You guys are in touch with one another offline?
Yeah. In fact, Ms. Boudin and I emailed each other maybe 15 minutes ago. I was checking my email. And we've been going back and forth on a Google Doc to hash out a job description, regardless of if it's the position status is a stipend paying position or not. Still want to have a framework, responsibilities. So I have included all those things.
Wonderful.
Yep. Well, so as soon as Ms. Boudin is able to step away, and I'm hoping that'll be either this week or next week early, we're going to have face-to-face time. We'll try to go take it to the next level.
Another thing is, speaking of Ms. Boudin, is we're going to have a meet and greet on the 26th of November with Ms. Boudin, for anybody who has a special ed kid who wants to come and ask questions. It's going to be at the Community Center on South 6th Avenue at 7 o'clock. You know, so please, everybody join us.
It was November 26th,
November
7 p.m.,
26th,
Community Center.
Community Center.
Could the district send an email out to the parents?
They have. That happened today.
Say that once more, Mark?
They have.
Could the? Said they had. Yeah.
That happened today.
Oh, yeah.
It happened. Okay.
Thank you.
We blasted an email out to all the families as well.
And just one more thing. At the fundraiser, it was like an inclusive event. We had kids from the GLOW program there. They had a blast. They're making their own greeting cards, and they sold a whole lot of them. So, like, if you want to send a greeting card that has feeling, I would recommend buying some of these.
How do you get them? I saw the ads. If I wanted one, what would I do?
I'm glad you asked. I brought their flyers with me. They're here on the table.
Wonderful. Okay. And is there an email address that we could read out into the record for hopefully someone's listening to this?
There is.
Proceeding?
There's a website.
A website, better.
It's glowhp at hpschools.net. And there's https tinyurl.com/glowcards.
Okay, so tinyurl.com/glowcards is the website to go to, or is it glowhp at hpschools.net?
Yes.
Okay, to find out more, or flyers hopefully will be around. They look really nice. I saw some examples of them.
They were out at the event. They were selling rather well.
Yeah, wonderful. It's a good time to do it.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, well, we'll look forward to hearing more about that. And I appreciate that emails got sent out, even though we haven't figured this out yet. Thank you. Okay, where are we? Are there any other public commenters? Dr. Scott. Bye, thank you for coming.
Hello. So I'm here just in the capacity of offering some gentle reminders and requests for further action, because I feel like there was some progress made in the last 2 meetings in October on issues with the schedule and band and choir and music, arts, humanities, curriculum, and so forth. So first, just a reminder, the schedule, even though we're now far enough in the year that it doesn't seem to be like there's anything we can do about it, and we've heard that it's a budgetary impossibility right now to do anything about it. The schedule is still kind of a mess at the middle school. My 7th grader is still in band, but I question what's the point sometimes. So right after the meeting last time, the first 2 band sessions were, she was taken out of Spanish, and that was to deal with this overlap problem that came up last time. But of course, that doesn't work for the Spanish teacher. And she repeated Miss G's words, which were kind of immortal and like, yeah, she's a good, tough teacher. That's not going to work for me. And it really just doesn't work to be taking kids out of Spanish so they can do band. So the road that we went down was clearly one that needs to be amended by next year, and I just really want to encourage everyone that that amendment process really needs to be happening now, and I hope we'll hear some about that in December. So things like, maybe we have to bring back some 6 periods. I see on the agenda there's already a 6th period, an extra period of algebra that's now going to be taught. That seems to be, I don't know the background on that, but I mean the reality is I think the board is going to have to find budget to bring back 6 periods, to fill in some courses that really need to be taught so everybody has an opportunity. I also think that the possibility of hiring another music teacher for the middle school really definitely has to be on the table if these issues are going to be resolved. Making music not always in the 0 period, or making it so that the only way you can take music is in the 0 period, and pitting orchestra, band, and choir up against each other in the 0 period, those are all problems that I hope will be on the table. So I guess I'll be here in December, and I hope we will hear some progress on what's actually going to be done next year. And I think it's important that that be happening now before the new year, because I think in the new year in January and February is a very good time for students in 8th grade and 9th, 10th, and 11th graders to be putting in their requests for what they want in a schedule. And if that data is collected then, that can help the board as they make personnel and budgetary decisions in April and May. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Definitely discussions about this are happening right now. It is on every board member's mind, and I'm sure it is also on Scott's mind. We're in a little bit of a transition period now because we are moving between middle school principals, but that aside, we are still highly focused on it. In high school, how long has it been going on that music is in the 0 period? And this is the 2nd year in a row, and last year as well. It was band versus orchestra versus chorus, all at the 0 period. And do you only take one, or is it an every other day sort of thing?
No, every day.
It's every day. Okay, so you take one and you
They
take
meet
it
every day, 8 period. This is our 2nd year.
Okay.
And
All right.
Scott, it was pull-out before that, yes?
Can you say a little more loudly?
I'm sorry, was it pull-out before that? So the students were pulled out of academic classes?
No, for lessons, but they were also scheduled during the day for ensemble.
They were.
There was a regular period during the
So the
day.
lessons were pull out, and the individual lessons were pull out, but the ensembles were scheduled classes.
Which is the model we now have at the middle school.
Right. Okay, well, that certainly is something, I agree that's something we've discussed this, talking about all of this as one, the schedule in the high school, schedule in the middle school, what classes we're giving, what are we going to do with music, at 0 period, all of this, and we definitely need to do it.
Had you gotten feedback from music teachers that you'd care to share about the staggered middle school music periods? Or is that something you're all still discussing? You know, the 10 minutes with one group of students, followed by 20 minutes with everybody, followed by 10 minutes with the second group of students?
Only from Mr. Martino when I asked all 3 music teachers to reply how
Yeah.
things were going, and he said, it's definitely much better, not perfect. That's almost exactly what he said.
Okay.
They'll be very involved in the scheduling process, which wasn't the case this past year,
Right.
once we get to it. And that actually, and I just actually had a conversation with Mr. Lasser today to prepare him to share with us and the community the requests that students make. I'll probably have that for you by March. The process starts in February, but the requests will actually come in March.
Okay, and were you able to consider the point that Dr. Scott brought up about having students at some point make requests before guidance gets involved, so we can sort of get like raw data about what students?
That's what I'm referring to.
Oh, that's what you're referring to. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to give you raw
Okay.
data once we.
Okay.
This is like right, before they meet with the guidance counselors.
Fantastic.
Those of us who have high school kids know that there's that first round in which they have a chance to just check off the boxes what they want, and then we enter that data into Genesis, and then Mr. Lassiter, as I understood it from him today, goes through rounds and rounds of narrowing the requests to accommodate the schedule. But I'm going to give you the very first round.
Can I just
This
ask
is-
a question?
oh,
I'm
go-
sorry. So it's November, early November. I know that freshmen are still feeling pangs of disappointment about not getting the electives that they wanted. And I'm sure that parents of those freshmen are still hearing about it. Why don't we just cull that information rather than waiting for next year? I'm not really clear about why we're waiting until next year.
We don't have last year's, well, we can't make changes this
No,
year.
I'm not suggesting we make changes. I'm suggesting that we just ask the students, what did you want?
Oh, we don't have that data.
I
asked.
know we don't have that data. I'm asking, why can't we get that data?
Ask the students.
Ask the students, what did you want? Because I'm sure
Oh,
they
you
remember.
mean now go back to them and say, hey, what did you pick back in April?
Yeah.
I can consider it. I'm not going to tell you right now that's something I would require the principal to do.
But maybe we should
it's
keep it
definitely
simple
worth
and have them
considering.
say what they want going forward.
What they would want today.
What they
don't-
want
They
now.
don't even have to go back to April.
I'm sorry, March is too late. I mean, I have to
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
I have to agree. I know where the budget cycle is at because, you know, it's ingrained in my brain when we do budget cycles. It's too late. It's too late in March because the budgets are going to be done and then we're going to be scurrying around because we realize, and the 6 periods are not normal. You know, if we had the money, we would have enough teachers, but we can't raise taxes, so we need to make these 6 periods, and we're not going to do the 6 periods. We won't know we have to do them properly and correctly the way it is. So we need I'm sorry, I'm not getting that out well, but we need to know earlier. So I like the January or February asking the students what they want
That's a fair
next
point.
year, so
I
that when
don't
we're
see
doing
any
the
reason why we
budgets, know
can't,
where
and
we're
it makes
going.
sense. Let me get back to the board, or at least the board.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
we
we're all
don't want,
pretty-
I mean,
yeah.
we don't want this mess next year. Either the middle school or some folks who, I shouldn't even bring it up, complained about there being this 0th period and how it's being used. Let's try to solve some of that sooner than later. And knowing what the students want earlier would help us.
I'm sorry to be annoying about
Not even going
this.
back, but going forward.
I'm sorry to be annoying about this, but I just would honestly appreciate an answer, like why we can't get that information in November, because it's just kind of extending the process longer than it needs to be. I'm sure that those freshmen can tell you what they wanted, what they thought they would get, and what they have. They could tell you all of that, like now.
So, and to be
I'm not prepared to give you an answer about that right now.
Reasonable.
Sorry.
I do want to know why I can't get an answer. though.
Because I'm not involved in the trenches on the ground managing the building to know what that entails. It very well might be something that's doable, but I can't give you an answer until I speak to the people who run the building.
That's fair. So
No,
we'll have
that-
we'll have an answer in a
That's
week.
fair.
about
The
some of this.
the thing that we need to be finding out, though, is about what the kids are going to be wanting next school year, not what, I mean.
Which
I'm
will
I'm-
include.
I'm certainly interested in what they would have wanted this year, but it is too late for, the schedules are not changing. We've done what we're doing. But for next year, and I think the point being, we don't want to be too late. We want to make sure that we're on
It's
time.
very reasonable, yeah. I mean, I don't see why there's a problem. I'll confirm with Mr. Lassiter, which I talk to him tomorrow, that why we can't start in January, February, but it makes sense.
Scott, I just got a little confused. You said that you had been talking with Mr. Lassiter about the process that had been going on, and that there's always a first round. So I thought this had not happened before. This was a new idea, that we would survey everybody, all the students, say like, we want you to list the electives that you want in the order you want them before you even talk to guidance. So are you telling us that
We do that.
that does already happen?
It happens.
Okay, because when we met
so
with
when
Dr.
you get a
Scott, it
form-
sounded like this was
Well,
like a big new idea.
What doesn't happen is,
What
we
doesn't-
don't do much with that raw data until the kids then meet with the counselors. So the kids might meet with the counselors, they'll have these selections.
I see.
And then
I
they
see.
have to, and then what Dr. Scott and some others are suggesting is there may be some dissuasion from taking certain electives at that point.
Sure,
you
right,
know,
or
that
whatever.
they've selected.
Yeah. We'd like to get a read on the raw data as soon as possible, and that can be as unrealistic as the students need it to be. I want to take in this order, fine art, film class, German, whatever's in the catalog that we might theoretically offer.
So I have a leadership team meeting tomorrow. I'll talk to Mr. Lassiter then, and if there's no reason why we can't, then we'll kick it off earlier.
Great, thank you, Scott.
Sure.
Okay.
Maybe there could also be a blank space where kids could write in, this stuff isn't even on this list, but I'd like you to put it on the list.
That too, yep.
That would be useful.
That doesn't mean we have to do it. I just
No, it's just to give us the
I'd like to
information.
know what they want.
Right.
And that's exactly why I would like to know what they wanted in the past. That's exactly what I'm getting at. I'm not thinking that this is, a practical measure necessarily, filling in a blank that needs to be filled in for next year, but it gives us some idea of what our current freshmen, next year sophomores are interested in. I don't think that that's useless information.
No, right. All right. So maybe at the next meeting you could tell us a little bit about how this might happen.
I'll send an email to the board first.
Okay,
And
great,
then
thank
I'll
you.
follow up in public.
That'd be great. Thank you so much. All right, where are we? Is there any additional public comment? Are there any additional comments by board members? All right. I do not have an acting president's report. Old business. We were going to discuss the board goals. And this, students, by the way, you're always free to leave whenever you want, or welcome to stay as long as you want. I just want to let you know, don't feel like you have to, yeah? See, oh, you don't want to listen to the board goals. In theory, it's a very important thing, but like actually going through it, it gets kind of slow.
You want to.
You know you want to. Thank you, students. Thank you for your input tonight, too.
Thank you.
All right, so I thought we have a lot of suggestions about the board goals. Maybe we could set aside, what do you think, 15 minutes tonight? And then try to wrap it up in 15 minutes next week?
Good.
How's that? Okay.
I think that's manageable.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you.
So what we have, I think, that Scott is very kindly going to project for us is, we did this a couple
You could, it's going to take another probably minute for the bulb to warm up. Do you want to start the process? If we all have our Google Docs in front of us?
Sure, yeah. I don't know does everybody have a computer? I texted around, or maybe emailed around, I don't remember, maybe both, a link to the current worksheet that we've been using. Let me see if I can now find it on my computer. It's called Board Goals Worksheet. Is everybody able to access it or see a printout or something? Yep. Okay, great. Okay, so this is basically the goals we have now. I restructured them a little bit. I have now some notes that you didn't have before. Mostly, Michelle forwarded me some comments, so I put those in either as possible goals or as comments. And the last goal, of course, goal 5, that's all potentially new stuff that we had talked about perhaps looking at our last meeting. Okay, so I can't now, I'm having trouble remembering when I did this. Did I make any other changes that you can't see transparently on here? All right, there we go. Okay, so goal 1 is our, that's the same general goal that we have now, correct? Yes. Okay, and you can look on the back of your agendas and see what the sub-goals are currently. I put numbers in front of them. And why don't you guys take a look at them and tell me what your comments are? I think this is all stuff that we had on there before, possibly with some additions that we made at the last meeting when we discussed this. In other words, I don't think I added any crazy additions. Okay, 1, ensure a play-based curriculum is the central component. Oh, and Michelle suggested we change that to PK through 3 rather than, what did it say before? It said
Primary grades.
primary grades. Okay, that was an addition. Does that sound reasonable to folks?
I like I like primary better because it's more amorphous. You know, what if they can only do it through 2? You know, primary could be pre-K through 3, it could be pre-K through 1, it could be pre-K through 2, but this gives them more, kind of us and the teachers more leeway.
Actually,
and I'm much more interested in the younger kids as well.
Pre-K through 3 is what's developmentally appropriate for primary grades. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go with
so
it
that's,
then.
I understand what you're saying.
You know what I mean.
And I love the idea of teachers having flexibility, but I think
Right.
that sometimes we over intellectualize their curriculum when they get to Bartle because it seems like a bigger school. They're still 2nd and 3rd graders. So I think that that's why I thought it was important to put the number grades so that we know primary grades is not just primary school here in Highland Park, but primary grades includes children in 3rd grade and 2nd grade.
Sounds good to me.
Right, and
Thanks, Michelle.
play-based would be different for a 3rd grader than for a kindergartner.
Absolutely.
So I'm
It
fine
might
with
look
it.
more like
I'm fine with it.
It might
It's
look more
fine.
like dress up, theater arts type stuff.
Okay. Number 2, sustain our social emotional learning programs. I think that's the same sub-goal that we have this year. I'm sorry, I stole your...
No, it's not
do you
mine.
mind? Oh, it's not yours. Is it mine, perhaps?
Community
agenda. Okay.
That's right.
Number 3, discipline. I just made into lettered paragraphs some of the sub-goals we already had. There's and I think Scott added some things here too that you've already seen. Implementing codes of conduct. We're still implementing them, right? Do we want to keep that in there? Is that no longer a goal? It's still a goal, right?
I think
3A.
I think so. I mean, I think that now that we have the code of conduct, it's important to refer to that. But also, I thought that we were trying to make more like specific goals about that. Implementing codes of conduct, balancing responsibility, restorative practices, and maybe talking more about like specifics, what that means or how that looks.
I don't know how that looks.
I don't know. But I do know that we were talking about like making sure that our suspension rates, that there's no disparity in
Oh,
subgroups,
I see.
things like that.
I see. Oh, okay.
So you want to narrow the equity gap, right?
Yeah. So
Right.
could we do like a 3B, like strive toward
Or maybe
continue to work towards?
reduce. That's more like
Reduce.
specific data.
I was going to show you some charts today. We're already seeing that.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
but so let's keep it alive. Reduce.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is supposed to be a suggestion. Let me put it back as a
Maybe
suggestion.
reduce suspension rates for marginalized students or something like that?
Also, I think that one of my suggestions for B was to ensure therapeutic and social emotional activities are the centerpiece of in-school suspension. To make sure that it's not just sitting somewhere quietly the whole school day, but that there's actual therapy and remediation.
That's actually what we're calling it, a therapeutic support program, as
Okay.
opposed to a punitive program.
So we can,
Therapeutically oriented or something? I mean, how do you feel about
Fully
that?
support-based therapeutic.
Oriented.
I would.
You want me not
Yeah,
use the
that's
word
fine.
therapy? Is that too?
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't want to guarantee we're going to provide
Yeah.
therapy with an LCSW every time someone gets
no,
suspended
I
because
mean
we don't have that.
therapy, not in terms of the clinical sense.
Therapeutic.
Yeah, therapeutically oriented is
Okay.
right, I think.
So on 3B, do we want to say, what do you guys think? Do we want to reduce suspension rates for traditionally underserved subgroups or something like that? Or we want to say just reduce disparity in suspension? Well,
I would say reduce disparity in suspension
disparity in
among
suspension rates among
all students.
groups
Because
of
we're,
students. But I think it's groups too. It's not just.
Well, it's just inherent in the disparity. The disparity would be remediated and the subgroups wouldn't be.
I see.
Yeah, like, so, for instance, is our Hispanic population considered an underserved subgroup?
Maybe that's not the right way to describe it.
Because we're seeing an uptick in our suspension rates for Hispanic students. We're seeing a downtick for our students of color. So I think what Michelle's pointing out is thoughtful. We have to look at all our subgroups.
Do you want to use the word using the word subgroup or something like that makes it clearer to me?
Yeah,
Rather than like reducing disparities between like the four of us at this table, because we might have different.
Maybe we can just leave it at that then, like you said, to reduce disparities in maybe
in suspension rates among subgroups.
In suspension rates among subgroups.
Subgroups. All right.
Because I think Hispanic students are a
subgroup
of the greater,
Mark, only a few
community.
minutes left. We're almost there.
I'm just,
Yeah, no, I know. This is awful. It's late at night, and okay. So you see what's up there for B. That's Michelle and my suggestion. So we're not going to like officially. I don't know how we officially adopt these. We don't usually vote, right? Do we vote?
I think we just agree on.
We just agree. So we want to do our official agreement handshake until next week. Okay, secret handshake next week. So everybody can take another opportunity to look at this during your mini spare hours over the course of the week. In other words, if there's some language you don't like, set your editing mode to suggesting and stick it in there yourself. Okay. Eliminate out of.
we agree.
Oh, okay. I thought that was eliminate out of school suspension except in case of severe transgressions. Oh, wait a minute. E speaks to what Michelle was just saying. And reduce. Okay, so can we evaluate under the lens of reducing the. I think we just put in what you said here, right, Michelle?
Probably just stick it in right in the middle of it.
All right. Reduce. I can't do this. Reduce what did we say?
Reduce disparities
in discipline
suspension-
rates. How about discipline rates?
Absolutely. Let's
Among
go for it.
subgroups. Okay.
Disparities.
Disparities in discipline rates. Okay, there you go. Whatever. Continually update curricula to be culturally inclusive, responsive. And you had a comment on this, I think. Oh, should we put in specific goals about the the LGBTQ program, the
I
Amistad
can
Act?
do that. Like, I can edit the document afterwards, but I did want to talk to everyone about the second note that I had about the ACEs study.
Oh, okay.
I think that it's important for, like Ms. McNally brought this up in our curriculum meeting, how important it is for her staff to understand the ACEs study, and Ms. Knapp agreed. So I thought maybe we would make that a district-wide initiative
that's a good
to
idea.
educate all of the faculty and staff about the ACEs study, including paraprofessionals, including the cafeteria staff, because those people are making contact with students. So anyone who has student contact should know about that.
I'm sorry to be a dope, but I read your note. I copied and pasted it. Where is that note?
It's
just located
well,
for me?
I can write it in. I just wanted to have
Yes.
a discussion about that because I can always edit that in.
I think it's a great idea. Yeah, can you edit that in at your leisure?
Yeah, so
at your leisure.
as a district-wide initiative, is that something that we're interested in doing, like to educate everyone about that?
I think we're at least interested. If you put it in and just make sure you put it as a suggestion,
Okay.
then people who show up next week can see like this is something we're suggesting.
Okay.
And if people don't like it, we can exit right back out.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So you'll do that. Thank you. Take action on results of research by implementing updated homework protocols. Are we still working on that? What's going on with that, Scott? Goal one, number 5.
Group can do you want me to take an update right now?
Well, I mean, are we still in a position where we have not yet finished
We're
taking action?
scheduled to revamp our social studies curricula over the summer. We're already engaging our staff and PD around Amistad curricula.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that, actually. I think Michelle can add that. Will you add that, too, the
Yeah,
Amistad
I
stuff?
will.
Okay. Number 5. I'm sorry. I'm slow.
Oh, yeah, homework protocol. This is something I need to focus on.
Okay.
I would leave it there. Remember, the board is evaluating me based on these goals, so I'm be held accountable to focus on that.
Okay, all
Back
right.
to it.
Okay.
I haven't made any movement yet.
Yeah, I always forget, right? We evaluate you based on these goals, not On the, not on the plan, not on
I
the strategic
believe
plan.
so.
Oh, boy, all right.
So that's why I'm paying close attention to these goals.
Okay, perhaps I will make them a little more.
The strategic plan is
Oh, yeah, most of it's aligned to this.
So
You're just
it's all-
hashing some things out, that's all.
Right.
So some more like specific things to.
Okay, so I had a quick something on number 5, because the
Yes.
homework protocols is something that we do talk about in curriculum often. Many of the issues that we're hoping Ms. Rodriguez will fix are related to grading disparities from classroom to classroom. And we talked about this as far as like how heavily homework is valued in the grading systems of one teacher to another teacher in the same subject area in the high school or the middle school, et cetera. So depending on which teacher you have, they could be the same student doing the same stuff, same behavior, same work, totally different grade at the end of the school year because of those percentages, those weighted percentages on things like homework. Also, like class participation. Class participation might actually be something that varies because a student is an introvert, not an extrovert. So I think we actually need to.
I agree. Can you make that a letter, though?
Yeah,
A sub-action under 5?
Oh, so maybe can we have Michelle?
I can see it coming out of that work
Just
I do for
edit
number
it.
5.
Yeah, so as far as like homework and making progress on that front, I think that we need some more specific, real tangible goals on that one. And those 2 suggestions, that's what I had to offer, is somehow standardizing the grading percentages for each subject area and by building, and then also making sure that we are not adding class participation in a significant way in the grading for each classroom.
I have a very hard time with that because I really feel like we have to give teachers some flexibility and ability to make the determination on how they're going to structure their class and how they know they teach themselves and what component of the class is going to have more importance over other components. And I think in some areas you're going to have instances where class participation, because of the structure of the class or the content, is much more important than the homework. In other classes where you can establish that the homework is more important than the class participation. And I think having too much of a standardized system would detract from the teacher's ability to make those determinations themselves. But I know that there was another issue there where it was like a double weighting issue.
Yeah.
And I think that there was some strides taken, but I don't know that we ever had a system to make sure that we determined that the double weighting system was eradicated.
What's the double weighting system
It's still
among
super
teachers?
confusing, and I feel like we've talked about it so often, and I can't get my brain around it.
What is
Like,
the double weighting, like within classes, teachers
We're
are
not
double
going
weighting?
back to the double weighting.
We're not talking about the GPA double weighting, right? We're talking about
No.
within classes?
It was just a way that, if I can remember correctly, depending on the number of points the kids could get on an assignment versus the weight that had overall in the class. So there was potential there for like one single bad grade to carry more weight than
right.
any one other bad grade, because it wasn't, if homework was 30% of the grade, but there was only one homework assignment.
Right.
Versus where tests were 30% of the grade, but there was 12 tests throughout the year.
I feel like this is a huge issue, and one that, I don't know how much we've addressed it. I remember talking about this quite a bit. I wonder if we should leave it off our goals, but put it down as old business as something to address. I mean, we have a lot of different opinions here on like how much this represents micromanagement, and how much it represents like just an effort at basic
maybe
fairness.
the goal should just be to evaluate the current system.
Yes. How about that? Would that be, how do you feel about that? Evaluate current system for consistency between teachers, reliance on participation and homework. I mean,
Because we frankly don't really know.
yeah, evaluate and discuss, evaluate and discuss, I don't know.
Or assess.
Or evaluate, yeah, okay, maybe that's the same thing. Evaluate grading practices, grading criteria, I don't know. Including role, including, I'll write this, somebody can write this up better later, including whether grades are consistent in similar subjects across teachers, discussion, role of homework in grading, role of homework and participation, in grading.
I'm not going to vote for that.
You're not going to vote for that?
No, I feel like the farther along we go, we have to be very careful to not get into, respectfully, the weeds. I feel like we need to go back and, these are great ideas, and maybe it's a wish list, but I'm not sure that it's appropriate to have all of these things under board goals for a year. Just my thought.
I think we should know what our grading criteria is. And I don't think
That's
that-
fine, but I don't know that needs to be in an annual board goals statement.
I think it's going to take us so long to figure out exactly what we can reach consensus on in this, not to mention the weeds issue. My preference would be to make this a priority for a board discussion so we can at least get some, I still don't really know what the problems are, and I don't even.
I am not against fair grading. Obviously we all want
You're
fair
against
grading.
fair grading,
but,
I think.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just feel like we need to be careful not to get too into the weeds.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is, can everybody think about this a bit? Okay, I think I tend to agree with you, Rob, but I do think it's an important issue, and I want to figure out what's a way that we can pin it as an important issue without making it a goal that will require hours of discussion as to what's appropriate to mandate of teachers, what we all think is important is fairness. But let's without trying to pass the buck too much. Can we think about this for next time? Mm-hmm. Consider a goal related to grading fairness. Okay. All right, so this is something we have not decided. We'll present it to the other board members. I'll try to remember to send an email a little earlier this time, reminding people to take a look at this. All right, is that okay for now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, goal 2. You can all read this. Scott, what percentage of the class currently, I'm looking at goal 2, number 1.
Right.
Global Citizenship Seal. What percentage are we at now?
I don't know the exact percentage. It's not close to 25%.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
No, it's maybe
I know I
let's say
listened
on
to it
average
every
about 20 students out of class for 125.
Okay.
Probably 1, 2, 3%. It's a lofty goal.
20 out of 125 is pretty good. that's approaching 20%, right?
Wait, yeah, 20, what's that, 10%, right? Yeah, so 10 or 11% right now.
Okay. All right. So, I don't know enough to know what 25% would require, but this sounds like a realistic goal for you?
It was a number Adam Gold, Mike Lassiter, and I came up with
great.
collaboratively.
Okay, perfect. All right. Sorry, I've forgotten which of these goals comes from where. Equitable access to resources. Okay. Including the technology. I think we should probably put something in here about, minimizing extent to which success depends on access to internet after school. Mm-hmm. It's getting late. We're already past 15 minutes, so let me just.
That's a good addition, though. It's a good note to end on.
Yeah, good note to end on?
Yeah.
I like that.
All right. Do we want to, the math thing. Okay,
we should make sure Chris is.
Yeah. Just take a look at it. This is a result of, we're detracking one math class or one grade's math class. And what I tried to do here, this is the result of my talking with Chris instead of clarifying some of the points that Chris believes and that he came to convince me are going to be necessary. Redesign the curriculum, blah, 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 then redesigning, well, you can see what it says right there. I think from my conversation with Chris, 3F sounds particularly important, just figuring out where we're going to go after Math 6A for all.
Couldn't he consolidate, or you consolidate that into like 1.5 sentences? Because I was at the meeting and I agree with all of those, but we don't need, do we, A through F and a goal? Isn't the goal really?
You want to? How about if you take on the task of rewriting the summary?
Oh.
Yeah.
I put my foot in the mouth.
Yeah, you did. Mark 2, take stab at rewriting.
There you go.
Oh, crap.
So I think the critical thing is, so I'm just done.
All right,
So
I'll do it.
the point is everybody needs to be ready to succeed. We need to support those that are in 6A. We really need to figure.
It's a goal, you know.
I know.
I'll do it.
Yeah, this
I'm
is not
setting
my
myself
be all and
an
end all.
email.
This is, I think all these points need to get in there somehow, but perhaps summarized. Okay, honors distinction, we're going to continue to do that. Michelle, you had suggested eliminating, is this goal 3, number 5? Is that because we already have researched alternatives? I think you had said.
So part of what we, Mark, myself, and Scott sat in on during the workshop was a class that talked about AP for all.
Okay.
And there was a lot of information, and in the notes that I sent everyone about my conference experience, there's an entire presentation about that. So that was where that came from.
I see.
It's really deep in the weeds as far as stuff we would like to talk about at 9:40. So
yeah, let's.
We can definitely talk about that later, but that's why that was kind of delete number 5, because it's kind of thinking about it in a completely different way.
I see. Okay. So yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I didn't stick to my plan to get us out of here. So let's stop here.
Great.
I'm putting a little note there. There's some assignments for various people. You know who you are. Everybody else should continue to consider and go ahead and make suggestions on this draft. And we will meet again in a week. Sorry about the overrun there. Okay. Oh, sorry. Where are we? We're at public comment? Yes. Oh, new business. Does anybody have any new business? All right. Public comment. The Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and is reserved this time for your comments. Board policies 164 and 167 establish and regulate the right of the public to participate in public meetings. Would anyone like to address the board? You're welcome to if you did have something. All right. There are no public commenters who have stepped up. I would like to move to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
So he flew me home from Europe, and they said he was going to die that night, and he made it another month, maybe 6 weeks. So his system slowly went into shut down, but he wasn't before. But I took it very, very